You never know. Anyway, hello everybody. This is Evan and Kyle back on the Motion Design Hotline. Thanks for hanging out with us here on Friday, May the 1st. Happy May Day, Kyle.
Yeah.
Today's the day, of course, that we celebrate labor, and you and I will now be performing some graphical labor for people.
Yes.
Here on Motion Design Hotline, we ask you to send us your questions using a handy form. It's available in the description, and people have done just that. So today we have a question from Kevin B. That we're going to get into. But if you have a question here live, then get it at us in the chat. And also, I guess even more specifically, if you're hanging out with us, let us know who you are, where you're from, and what you do in the motion design field. Visual effects, After Effects. Are you a Houdini person? What's your deal? What's your deal?
What's the deal with Houdini?
That's right. If you're familiar with the show, sometimes we have guests on, but usually it's answering a lot of questions. Kyle, before we get into it, for anyone who doesn't know Kyle, Kyle, you're like the guest on the show now. Tell people about yourself and what we're getting into.
Yeah, sure. I feel like it's been a long time since I talked about myself, which is probably for the best. But I'm Kyle. I do After Effects stuff. I sometimes talk about those things. Actually, pretty soon here, I'll be talking about stuff at Post-Production World Online. Obviously, shoulda, woulda, coulda been in Vegas at NAB this year, but, that didn't happen. So a couple weeks from now, Post-Production World will be online. I'll be presenting some stuff about shape layers and expressions. So if you want to know about those things, tune in, ppw-online.com. I'll put it in the chat as well. Aran talked about it last week.
Well.
Yeah. So go back and check that out too.
Yeah. And also, Kyle, you might not know this, but Aesthetic Boy in the chat says that you are the cute one. So.
Oh, well, that's true.
Yeah.
Also, someone says there's an echo on my mic, so I'll pop in my headphones real quick, even though that's not usually an issue, but Skype's being a little persnickety today.
We're having a time. We're having a very, very technological day here.
Look at that. Solutions.
Well, we're working on all the solutions here.
Yeah.
We've only had 3 crashes just trying to make program go today. So it's a time, it's a time to be alive.
Hopefully this improves. Maybe it's I don't know.
Kyle.
You have a big
could be my
wall
end.
of switches, right? So who knows?
Click. But because it could even be an audio duplicate. Ugh, boy. But people say it stopped. So
yeah. Well, I'll just wear these.
Now, the problem is there's either a big time echo or it's been fixed. It really depends on the sort of where we're at in with the chat. So Kyle, what were we working on? What did people send us?
Honestly, I don't even know anymore.
What's even going on?
So we got a question from the forum, which is, of course, the preferred way to get questions answered well, right? We love live questions in the chat, but, there are limits to what we can do just off the cuff, right?
Yeah.
But our good pal Kevin B. From the forum said, "Hi, Evan."
Hello.
Excluded me, but that's okay. I was hoping you could explain how the new Amazon Prime commercials are made. Here's an example. https:// No, I'm not going to. I don't read that part. Okay, sorry.
Yep. You're reading the stage directions, Kyle.
At first glance, there seemed to just be 2.5D cameras moving past static figure cutouts. However, at several points, the camera is on an obvious curve around the figures. Totally stumped. Thanks for any help. Kevin B.
Boom.
I don't know if you have the spot ready. I have the spot ready.
Yeah, let's.
Obviously, we should probably demonstrate.
Yeah, I'm going to jump to your screen here so people can enjoy.
All right.
Scrub through, and we'll talk about what we're seeing here.
Yeah. So I've got this muted, but I don't think we're sending audio from my screen anyway.
Unlikely.
So just imagine there's a lovely jazzy track here. There's a couple of these in the campaign. I know there's another one with like a little girl under the table eating some dessert that she stole. But there are all these, nice time freeze situations.
And some pretty classic text hanging out in the scene.
The most classic. So, obviously the bit here is that we've got time freeze. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit. And then obviously how one gets this text to integrate nicely into the scene is a big part of it too. We spent a little bit of time just kind of analyzing this and sort of figuring out, what's probably the most likely way that they did this. Mm-hmm. And some things are probably real, some things are probably not. Let's dissect it and see what we think.
Yeah, I mean the first real like conundrum, right, is how are we going to accomplish this? Like time is frozen. Well, thankfully, there is an ancient technique, which if you've heard me on this show about it before, and my dislike of mimes, I don't know if I've mentioned on this show, but in general, if you just have actors hang out and stand there, you walk around with the camera as much as you want, right? Mm-hmm. And that's a lot of how a lot of these things are done. And we end up with things that, you think like, oh, there's a lot of like liquid, right? Like if you can scrub through to some of where you've got some of these liquidy things happening, mm-hmm. You've got like the milk pitcher situation. And you think, well, but it's made of milk. Like, actually, it's made of glue.
Yes.
That's actually a solid that you can create inside. It's a practical prop. It's very easy to do.
Got some here with the coffee as well.
Yeah. Also super easy kind of thing to do or to comp in, whichever. Mm-hmm. Those sorts of things, not super hard. The one thing that is difficult is finding good mimes to do this, mm-hmm. As we'll demonstrate later. But yeah, someone sent an anonymous tipster mm-hmm. sent us that carousel video from like, what was it, 10 years ago or something?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, which if you're not familiar with this, what was it even for? What was the purpose of the original? Was it a music video?
I think it was an ad of some kind.
Yeah. Anyway, there's a bunch of these like clowns and stuff. I don't know. You might as well load it up. We're already looking at your screen.
Well, I dropped it in the chat.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, here I'll just pull it over here real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean the basics of it are, you got a motion control camera and you got people who hold really still. And we're theorizing here. Let's see if there's some good stuff. And, in cases there's wires and stuff like that to help them. Mm-hmm. This is from about 10 years ago. I suspect today, and Joel called this out too, my personal assumption is that it is in fact people just holding really still, but they probably have a motion control camera that can move really fast. And so it helps minimize any movement that the people are making. And so, that's a big part of it. Obviously, just getting your footage as pristinely as possible is going to be the key here. Mm-hmm. But we've gone through, we did find a clip that is doing this technique, and we are going to kind of talk through some of the things that we found as we were working through it. So
that's true. Yeah. So I don't know. I guess we bounced all the files to your machine so we can check
so
that.
Bouncy.
Bounced. But yeah, just analyzing this one though, before we leave the original, mm-hmm. You can kind of see the people kind of in the background. They seem just like photos because there's not a lot going on with them. So that's an easy mm-hmm. kind of cutout 2.5D situation. Whenever you're kind of pushing a camera past things, those are probably 3D in post elements, just because you don't want to mush a high-speed camera actually through a cake. So not necessary. Those elements you can just pepper them in, little 2.5D little sprites of cake mush over there, especially that candle that's clearly been art directed to be falling off the cake.
Mm-hmm. All those crumb particles there.
Yeah, those little crumb particulate. But a lot of the things in here could just as easily, like that little creepy boy in the background.
Oh yeah,
definitely could be photo. And a lot of the elements don't need to be as complex or as fully realized once you start really dissecting them a lot. What was the other thing I was going to say? Most viewers, right? Most people who watch this commercial, you'll probably only watch it like maybe once. Maybe you'll see it 5 times in your ad cycle diet. Unless they do that mistake where an advertiser buys 3 in a row on a streaming platform, I don't know if people have encountered this weirdness where you get the same commercial 3 times in a row. Then you really get to scrutinize all the little oopsies that are still in something that looks pretty seamless. So the more times you review it, the more seams you find. But for most commercial work, people are only going to see it 1 to 3 times. So a lot of the oopsies can stay in there.
Not to say that we think there's a lot of oopsies in here or anything.
No.
I honestly don't know. But if you watch the people in the background in the kitchen here, I don't know. Something about them feels like they very much could just be flat stills.
Yeah.
But maybe that would be more work, depending on how they shot this exactly. Mm-hmm. If this whole move actually takes 2 seconds because it's a really fast motion control rig, it's probably easier to just have them be real. But it's really hard to tell.
Yeah.
But like I said, through our own exploration of what we're going to show here, we definitely found some things where if you're doing this without a motion control rig, which is doable, but it's going to take some post work.
That's right. Some. All right. Let's see what our brilliant creation has wrought.
Yeah.
Evan and Kyle each spending maybe an hour.
This didn't take too terribly long. Right. But we were able to find a clip of a time freeze like this, and we inserted a couple elements in here, and we did some fixes. There's a couple fixes we didn't do or did kind of, poorly because there was a limit to how much time we were willing to spend on this. But, considering the amount of time we spent on this and that we were working with a clip that we did not direct at all, I think it turned out pretty well. And
I don't know.
Go ahead.
I'm going to say for the audience out there, if you're watching this stuff, then, it'd be great to know which people do you think were the worst mimes on the day? Who had to be fixed? Who had fixes? Which actors did not have fixes? We've got Dr. Chart Looker. We've got Dr. Chair Pusher. We've got Chair Sit Man. What do we got? What do we call these people?
There's background couple. There's Scrubs here in the front.
Scrubs, yeah.
Which we don't want of Scrubs.
Yeah, well. And then, of course, there's deep background Scrubs. So in the chat, let us know who you believe needed to have the work done on them. You let us know. You let us know by popular vote which one's in the doghouse. But Kyle, you added the donut in and the sprinkle explosion.
I did.
That's not original.
We have not quite decided. I think maybe he was aggressively spiking this donut into the iPad. Actually, I'm not sure how well you can see it, but this is actually a pineapple MyPad. I wanted to make sure we were staying, legally safe. So I added a little pineapple logo there.
Thank goodness.
Our lawyers are not quite up to Apple standards. Since my cursor's right over it, hopefully most of you have noticed background couple guy did not hold his arm very still.
He did not. He had like bad delts or something, and that arm just falls down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we were going to fix that. And just to talk through it real quickly, we decided that the better way to fix it was to have his arm down, so that way when it crosses here, we don't have to roto. We just kind of ran out of time/desire to do that.
Yeah.
Just being real here. We did kind of look at it, and as Evan pointed out just before we started, the desk height in the arm crack was a little bit of a thing. We just didn't quite get to that, but
yeah, there are a lot of like little micro annoyances once you start really diving in on stuff like that. And the most obvious solution is to roll it back to 1 and yell at the man and then go back again. Because there's a lot of things. But we had a bunch of people in here who were actually blinking. They could not control their blinks. So, most people in the chat are calling out Arm Guy.
Yep.
He's just a distraction to take you away from the other things.
Exactly. But that's also a good example of how, something that's fairly small and he's not where you're looking, although maybe he is because I put Donut Day back there. Was that my intent all along? We'll never know. But, it's a fairly small background move, but now that you've seen it, you probably can't look anywhere else, right?
Yeah, it's the only thing I can see. But yeah, we went ahead and this iPad pad looker doctor. She blinks. Yep. She does a big blink as we pass by her. Guy in the chair, he also did a blink. And then I guess the doctor pushing the chair, she also blinked as she's staring at who knows what out of frame.
She so did.
So all of their faces ended up getting, basically we take a sample of time when their eyes are open and good. And then we just freeze frame that, mask it out, and then track it into the scene. I used some mocha, but yeah, that's it's all there is to it to make their eyes remain open. One of the trouble is that after people blink, their face kind of doesn't reset to the same. It's not always the same kind of pallid mask that they wear, unless you have some really rigid face control or have done a lot of Botox. But yeah, that's kind of the situation. Those are my contributions to trying to fix the blinks.
Yeah, so I'll point out your stuff in just a second here, just so people can see it. So we have here's blink from that lady. See it? Yeah. Blink. And then as we get over here, further into the clip, right as wheelchair guy comes into the shot, blink. And then right as Dr. Chair Pusher comes into the shot, blink.
You horrible blinkers.
Yeah, I feel like the background people actually did an excellent job of holding still, aside from this guy. But yeah, so we definitely both leveraged the 3D camera tracker quite a bit. I think we're going to talk through this kind of quickly, but please feel free to ask any questions as we're going through this. If there's something you don't understand, want us to focus on a little bit more, because that's literally the point of the show, right?
Well, we like to be interrupted.
So, you got your clip here, and you just go up here to animation and choose track camera. And I think one thing to point out too, there's a lot of different ways to track in After Effects, and which one is the best is always going to depend on the context of what you're doing. Something like this, you have a big, obvious camera move. So yeah, the camera is what's moving. So that's what we want to track here. But even as part of that, I definitely used Mocha and some like After Effects mask tracking and some other techniques for individual pieces. It's obvious. It's usually a combination of things to kind of get where you need to go here. So you just choose it from animation, track camera. It'll kind of run itself there. And then you get this 3D camera tracker effect, which gives you all these points here. And I've made mine larger just so that you guys can see better. If you want to do that too, track point size, you can adjust it right here. You can make your points that big if that's what you want to do.
That's wonderful.
That's how I like to work.
Well, I'm also I'm glad people are getting into some Doctor Who chat with us here. Kyle, do you watch Doctor Who? Do you know?
I don't.
Are all about? Okay, well, people tell me it's the best episode. I've never seen a Doctor Who. People are going to come and strip my nerd badge away.
So
yeah, I guess the other reason
go ahead.
That we need this camera solved because we knew we wanted to put an actual 3D donut in the scene, right? So if you're going to put 3D geometry in there, you need to solve for a camera. You need to put the camera in the space because when you're going to deal with 3D things, you need some 3D solutions off the jump.
Very much so. You see, this did a pretty good job of tracking our foreground elements. Pretty good job in the background too. Let's say that we wanted to put something on this doctor's face here. You can just kind of drag a lasso around a bunch of points. And when you've got them selected, you can right click and then you can create text, nulls, or solids. Personally, I like solids because it generally gives you a pretty easy way to kind of see, if stuff's working. I'll just, name this here. And personally, I like to set these to like overlay or something. It kind of depends on the scene. Maybe bring this down, maybe bring this down, just so you can kind of get a nice little idea. And I'll kind of go through and track in the couple things that I think I want to tie stuff to or may use. And I just kind of give myself solids, and I watch this about 7,000 times to kind of see how it feels, and make sure that everything feels like it's sticking pretty well, right? And in this case, I felt just one pass did really nicely. And
yeah, I
then
was going to ask because, you know, usually I just drop little nulls in the space, but the solids do a nice job of visually kind of explaining as you watch it back what's going on. So it's a nice tip. And Jonas is saying in the chat, they probably didn't have much of a budget on this thing.
Probably.
No, I'd imagine that they were shooting something else in the space and then just
Yeah,
did
let's try this.
Yeah, let's give this a whirl because there are not a lot of stock clips that match this description.
Yeah, agreed. So, you know, once we got into it, we started doing a little just compositing work here. Maybe we'll take a second and point out Evan's couple eye fixes here, and I'll even just show you those isolated so that you can see. It's just these little kind of time frozen bits here.
These ghostly visages. Yeah, and so while you were using the 3D tracker, I just opened up Mocha to get the planes of the face. Because really the human faces have too many planes. I've said it before and I'll say it again. But we generally have, you know, four to six of them. And, you know, we really just needed to track the eyes, make sure the eyes line up over time, and that's it. And just kind of fade them on and off, feather them around the outside. In some instances, though, Chair Pusher Doctor at the back was one of the hardest.
I bet.
Because there's a notable grain difference as we move closer to her.
Oh, yeah.
Which does not scale good. So when you're grabbing sources and stuff, that can be troublesome. But, you know, that's why we would probably turn to some kind of like a per frame painting solution, fire up your silhouette paints and make that happen. But also
crucially, you know, at a certain point here, where am I going? Are you looking directly at her eyes, or are you looking at that text that's right next to her face?
Right. Yeah. This is a misdirection. Classic Penn and Teller. All right. So yeah, please continue with some of like the matting and stuff that went on. I think is where a lot of folks kind of fall down.
So the first thing I started with was our donut here, and I made this with Element. I thought that'd be kind of a nice complement to last week when Aran showed how to do this directly with a Cinema 4D model. And so this is Element 3D from Video Copilot, which is a really nice plug-in here. And so we have just a stock donut pack that we bought or got from Envato. And they had a lot of donut options. I thought the nice colorful sprinkles were a good way to go. And then in case you're not super familiar with Element, it's technically a particle generator if you kind of know how to do that. So what I ended up doing for the sprinkles, it's just this little pill shape. And then I made it in several different colors, blue, pink, yellow, green here. And then using the kind of more particle-like options in Element, let's see, here's my Element layer. You can see here's our donut. And then the just kind of using some of the scatter options here. I just have the ability to scatter those sprinkles. So then one of the biggest issues here is obviously this donut needs to go behind his fingers. And I honestly started by using the After Effects Roto Brush. But then in the course of this, I realized that I ended up running into some issues, mostly with his fingernails, honestly. Because there's a lot of times where his fingernails were a little too close to the color of the coat, the white of the coat. And there's some spots where like his skin tone is a little too close to the wall back there. And like I got okay results, but not great. So honestly, I just took this into Mocha. And since they're not moving, these were close enough to planes that it worked. So I got a pretty good thing off there and just applied it using some of the Mocha tools. Again, we can kind of talk through this more if we want. But I do really like the new integrated Mocha. I just use the version that comes with After Effects. But for example, I just kind of worked around his fingers there, and it tracked pretty well. You can see I've kind of tried a couple things. Some of them panned out, some of them didn't. I just kind of left this a little sloppy. But it's you just kind of do your tracks in here, and then nope, don't save. Right here in the Mocha thing, you can generate mats, you can apply them to things, you can create masks. You can create tracking data. Just kind of like choose one of these options and tell it which thing you want. And I don't know. I really like this versus having to knock back and forth between totally separate apps. You get a little more control directly in here.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, the background couple is far too generic for us to get a good track on. That's the real problem. They're too banal. The tracker just slides off of them. They're also immune to facial detection software. It's amazing. But yeah, like a lot of the times, like, oh, I'll try to use the roto brush. Like, no.
Yeah, a lot of these tools, like I usually find it best, like I'll kind of try the thing that I think is going to work, and then sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, and so then I try something else. And sometimes you don't know until you get in there. And certain things, like the iPad was pretty easy because it is a plane and it sits very still. He wiggles just a little bit, but it wasn't too bad. So I just kind of slapped copies of these above because that worked, but you could certainly use these as like mats as well. And as far as like adding the text in and stuff, that's pretty straightforward once you have the track. As I kind of demonstrated over here, you can just, grab something. If I wanted to put some text near him, just create text. And now I'll, make this say something and position it the way I want, rotate it the way I want, and it's going to stick pretty well. This tracker's been in After Effects for many years now, but it's a really powerful tool, and stuff that did this specifically used to cost like $10,000. So
yeah. And Fran is asking, if that's a photo, why not cut out the hand in Photoshop or mask it? Yeah, and if if you can get a photo of the doctor, absolutely. These are mimes, unfortunately. So.
We do. I mean, if you notice, we do get, a decent amount of 3D perspective as we go around. You see a lot more of his face is revealed.
But definitely, if you are compositing, like the people who are in the deep background, they could really easily just be photos, and then you could totally work out their alpha situation with Photoshop, which would be great, or just a little mask. That's also great. I think the ideal situation would have been to not have anyone in the deep background there. Like that couple can go, they can be excused from set. They're blurry, they're non-distinct. We probably won't even notice them. But that would
might
be
have
more
been
compositing. Yeah, that's true. Fewer distracting elements, please. But yeah, definitely you can Photoshop treat these things up.
I wanted to show one more thing too.
Yeah.
So. Just to kind of help point this out, I kind of explored a couple options because, as I was watching this, you definitely see. Oh, that's right. I did put some music on here. You can't hear it anyway. So as I was watching through this, the camera move could be smoother in spots. Maybe you don't see it as much when it's slow like this. But just for the sake of curiosity, I tried time remapping this. And while it makes some things more interesting, it also definitely really shut off that music again. Really showcases some of the lack of smoothness in the camera moves. You can see the really big like swoop in right before we come to the doctors here. But also, this is a good way to make it a much more dynamic shot, right?
Right. I mean, you could also just dunk the what is that? The warp stabilize on this bad boy.
So I explored that, and I was not real happy with the results. I think it was a bit confused from all the movement, right. And it was like doing a really huge zoom out when we were between here to here. This big move. Right. It was trying real hard to stabilize that, and did not look good.
Yeah, you're only going to gain so much out of that, but hopefully, I don't know. Hopefully that helps helps Kevin B out with that stuff. I don't know. Was there anything else in the file that you think was germane to people trying to recreate this on their own?
Let's see. So, I mean, like I said, I think kind of just take it a step at a time. One thing that you want to make sure that you do is place things. Okay, so here's a really good tip. So like this donut day thing back here. Let's say that's, that's where you want it. Think about just be intentional about what things you're going to do and figure that out before you go to all the trouble of rotoing, masking, whatever it's going to be. Get your solid track, put your elements in. I tinkered with this donut quite a bit too, like figuring out the exact orientation and stuff. And that really helps you know how careful do you need to be about this stuff. Because like in Mocha, I used his whole hand as the track, but that's just because I felt like that gave it more information to track, But really, I knew I was probably going to only need this from like the knuckles down. But you want to confirm that so you don't get like this perfect, pixel perfect, every frame, beautiful track for 15 seconds long if you're not going to use most of this. That's a huge waste of time.
Yeah, if you're never going to see some sprinkles in between his pinky over there, then probably don't deal with that.
So, like with this title over here, part of being a motion designer, compositor, whatever you want to call yourself, and it's kind of all this stuff mixed in, you need to be able to see things before they are fully in existence, right? And so you need to kind of be able to ignore that it's in front of him right now and decide really like, is this exactly where I want it? Cool. Because then you can kind of, as soon as you're past this frame, you don't need to worry about this anymore. And you can see right here that my mat actually stops right after that. So just be very intentional about what you're going to do, and you're going to save yourself a lot of time having to fix things that may end up not even being relevant.
Yeah, in the original ad, I think they did a really good job of kind of framing for where the text was going to be.
Absolutely.
To really visualize that. In some ways, it's like, oh, that looks like it's in the deep, like it looks like it's in like the middle ground. Like, yeah, but it's not really like the elements that would be in front of it don't intersect with it. So perfectly fine.
Yep.
Like we get the feel of rustic bread here, and nothing cuts in front of rustic bread.
Yep.
But we feel the depth very acutely. And then I think it's on the last text that it's more prominent when we're coming forward. And then, so we know kind of the planes that those are on. We know that the grandma here is probably, further forward than some of these elements, but she doesn't interact with them.
Right. And, you wouldn't want to make that not readable, because then you're covering up part of the branding. And
but yeah, it works pretty well. So hopefully that answers questions about that. If you have other questions, other live questions, get them at us in the chat. I'm going to go to the shot where we look at our heads.
Ooh, yuck.
Gross. And this is where we did mention that we do have a sponsor today. All the clips that you've been enjoying us manipulating come to us from Envato. The good people of Envato, hooked us up with some assets. We'll put links around to where you can get your hands on those as well if you'd like. One thing I'll say, I'll just show Evan's screen here. See how that goes. If you want, for example, this pack of 12 donuts, comes in many formats. 3ds, FBX, .max, .obj, which is how we were able to use it, right? Because you needed .obj for this to even work. So always look for those kinds of formats when you're looking at things. But yeah, this is a bunch of donuts, should you have need for them. And also this really interesting, I don't know, maybe one of a kind. Like, it's really interesting that we scoured many places to find this. And, this example of moving through a time freeze space as a stock element is great. But there's nigh infinite things on the Envato marketplace. So definitely, if you have a need for stock footages, check them out. They are, what I'll say is very reasonably priced. In this case, we might be the one sale that enjoyed this one. But there are just heaps and heaps of things on here, very reasonably priced for footage. And if you have a need for unlimited things, I would recommend checking out Envato Elements, which is their monthly, yearly plan for infinite things, which is pretty crazy. Unlimited downloads. They've got videos, photos, music, fonts. Fonts being a big one that stands out for me all the time. And if you're a student, hey, enjoy 30% off because you're a student. So, and although, Kyle, I know you keep telling me you're a student of life, but that actually doesn't does not count in this case. But yeah, so big thanks to Envato for giving us the funding to help keep this stuff going, and for the clips, which we enjoy teaching people things with. So, speaking of, we gotta get into it. Do we has questions that have been building up? What do you want to get to here, Kyle?
I saw a little bit of conversation about this in the chat and just thought I'd address it real quick.
Yeah.
So Scott was asking if anyone was having issues sending comps to media encoder, specifically while using Red Giant plugin. So the answer, Scott, is yes. It's a known issue that the After Effects team is tracking, and there are some third-party plugins that are causing it, but also a few built-in ones. So if you are having specific issues with that, I highly recommend that you maybe file a bug report, and it will help them gather data about which things are causing that. But I will also say that since the After Effects beta is public now, the issue does not exist in the beta. So, yeah.
Well, for those who want to jump forward in time a little bit, I was having that exact problem yesterday. You know how many bug reports I sent? None, because I was hell bent on trying to solve my problems myself, which was not getting me any further. Eventually, I ended up just using after codecs to export my MP4s, which ended up working out just fine.
And not to be too much of an apologist, but just to point this out, if a piece of software is not working the way you want, being mad about it doesn't really fix it, but telling the people that make the software what's wrong is probably a good way to get it fixed.
Look, Kyle, I didn't want to step into therapy today, but but yeah, I don't know. I often think like, oh, I can solve this. I can get through some of these things. Well, it's a machine. Like sometimes I can't do that. It be like that sometimes, and I don't know. Most of the times, most of my problems are solved by turning it off and on again. So I don't have that many gripes in the world. So, but hopefully that helps people out there. And what else we got going on here?
Go ahead.
We have some. Logan was asking to talk a little bit about text presets, and.
But then Logan went to make lunch, and he didn't answer my question about what specifically he wanted.
That's right. Logan did not come for the follow-up on that one. But I think what I'd like to see is just an overview of how do you even make text preset to start with, and then we can get into more specific. Like the thing is with text presets, and I guess all kinds of presets, are that you can. Anything that you can conceivably cram into there, right, can be saved as a preset. So we can get as deep as you like. Whatever you can do with the text animator can become a preset. But just in general, though, how to make it, where to save it, and then what to do with it, I guess is the big thing. Let's see. What was I going to say about that? That's usually text presets. I end up making a bunch of them at the start of like a project for like corporate work, just because we're going to make the text come on in the same way, and we have 20 blocks of text, so make sure I save the preset so I can reuse it later. And that's probably the way I end up using them the most. Kyle, you do some real wackadoo things with text layers, so I don't know what to say about that. It's all the uses are only bounded by your imagination.
True.
But you got some stuff on your screen. Let's go have a look at what's going on.
Okay. So I'm just going to kind of, freeform this, but please in the chat, if you have a specific thing in here that you want me to talk about or want to see, just throw it at us and I'll do my best here. So I'm not going to go super in depth on this because I do have a tutorial up that talks about all of this in a lot of detail, though I will just say, the one thing I recommend, so the text animator is kind of weird. It works differently than a lot of other things. I'm just going to pick position here. And especially when you're dealing with words and stuff, you're like, okay, well, I've got like this position property, but it either moves everything or something. I don't really understand what's going on here. And then you've got these weird like shapes. It's not super intuitive at first. But something I like to recommend, let me set this back. You give yourself a position animator, You just create an animator on text layer by choosing animate and then the property you want, okay? We'll get to the other stuff later. Just choose position and give yourself just a line of periods, okay? And then this takes you away from your brain wanting this to be letters, and now it's just shapes, and you can really understand what's going on here. I'm just going to crank up the Y value of this position here, and you can see it moved the whole line, okay? And that's because the way the text animator works, it's like an effector setup, okay? And so you've got these two little things here. These are actually your start and end value. So this isn't too different from trim paths or, stroke or other places where you have sort of a start and end that are determining whether something is visible or not, or in this case, whether it's affected by that thing or not. And so the end value is animating from the beginning of your line of characters to the end of it. And this is also a really great way to start understanding what these shapes do and what these ease high and ease low do. So square, and this becomes a little easier if you start giving yourself other values. Interesting. So square is actually, it's a little roundy right now, and I'll talk about that, but it's actually pushing a square through this, okay? I like working with index because then you can get exact characters instead of, 0 to 100. Oh, it's pushing a square through this line. The offset property will kind of show you that. Interesting. So then you could start choosing something like ramp up. Well, but it's going down. Yeah, but it doesn't care that I'm, changing the position like that. It's ramping from the default up to the changed value, okay? Anyway, that's the super quick version on how this works.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, throw some stuff at me and we'll make it happen.
Kyle, I would like to see text that, I don't know, kind of falls in and then kind of like squishes, like fun cartoon text.
Oh, all right. Well, we can do that.
Yeah.
So that to me sounds like we're going to be starting with a position animator. And I like to rename these, especially if I'm going to be using more than one, which kind of sounds like I might here. So if we're going to fall in, I almost feel like there's a little bit of bounce that we might need. And you can build this manually by using more than one animator. Personally, I really like to use Type Array by Paul Slemmer. It actually uses a expression selector, and it gives you just one set of keyframes that animates your stuff in. And it just makes it a little easier to kind of animate the whole thing and set a delay per thing here. Let me just try to make that a little more extreme. So what's happening here is it's applying this movement to each unit, be that characters, words, or lines, and then it's delaying them by a set number of frames. Let's make it like 5, just so we get a nice big delay. Boom, 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 boom. That's real easy to work with.
My word.
Oh, fully. It's just when you're doing something with bounce, I feel like this is a lot easier because here, let's go ahead and take this to -500, which is, pretty close to what I wanted. So if these are going to fall in, I feel like they need a little bit of bounce. And rather than having to do it with one animator to bring them down and another to kind of bring it back up a little bit, I can actually just take this influence right here that's going from 100 to 0. That sounds familiar. And I can push this a little bit past into the negatives here for a little bit of overshoot. I'm just kind of ballparking this. Boom, 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 boom. Look at that, how nice it is. And, I could adjust the frames. Another thing I really like about this is it can use markers. So if I wanted to, I really like using this for word animations because you could just go through and use markers to make it be when the words drop, which is handy. So
I get a fair number of questions from people who are making lyric videos and oh, that's so tedious, ... But there are a lot of things. Type Array is definitely one to get into if you're finding, because it really is remixing a lot of the control that you've got. And I think maybe presenting it in a way that's more intuitive for a lot of users. I think.
Agreed. Anyway. Because this does, it takes a little bit of practice to kind of understand everything that's going on in here. I will not dispute that. let's go ahead and just kind of, after it lands, we'll have the whole thing kind of scale up. So when you're using these ramp settings, this is one of the parts that's a little less intuitive. You really need to use the offset to kind of make that change happen. So let's just say once it lands, we get kind of a nice pop there. Easy ease, because I can't reach my flow panel all the way. Pop. You know, I would like that to have some like bounce and overshoot to it too, but I'm working quick now. The short version is you can stack multiple animators on a layer here. So notice I've got two different animators, or I could have, let's just delete this. Let's say I wanted scale to just be part of this one. Anytime you have an existing animator, you can add right here other properties or other selectors. And the way that stuff starts being able to stack up like that is really cool. But what's really nice is, you know, whether you're using type array or just manual, you know, start, end, keyframes, offset, whatever, what's really powerful is that you have this one set of keyframes and it's going to deal with the change from all the properties that you feed it. So if I wanted to give this scale and oops, wrong place, too many pop outs, scale and rotation, and trying to look for things that will, skew, things that will play with this overshoot. So as these come in, let's say that they're also scaling up from 2%, and they're going to, you know, skew a lot, and they're going to rotate a lot. So boom, boom, boom. Look at all that, you know, kind of life we added on there. And, you know, these,
so wacky.
Yeah, it's so wacky. You know, especially with rotation and stuff, these can get a little silly sometimes because they're very still flat 2D things. So, you know, make sure stuff stays appropriate. But, you know, you can get this nice thing there. And if you decide, you know, I don't really like all that skew and rotation, you can just set those back to 0, or you could just delete them out of the animator. You're just kind of deciding what properties you want it to be sort of fed by. And then you have one set of keyframes that determines the change in that state.
So yeah, once you've got it good though, how do we make this into a preset?
Oh, yeah. So in this case, I'm going to have to grab the effects as well, since I've got the controls that are fed out like that. You know what? Let me just get rid of that. So it's as if we made this totally manually here. I'm going to make this amazing one just quite fast, but that's okay. We'll just kind of boop, do that, get over here, and boop. They're all in. Let's look at this masterpiece. Whoa! I guess you did ask for scale, so we'll put some scale in. Whoa! Okay, so for any preset, all you need to do is just grab all the stuff that has been changed that you want applied when this is used again. If you want this actual text as part of it, you're going to grab the source text too. But if you don't, you can avoid that. So instead, I'm just going to grab this animator 1, and let's say that we want the layer transform properties also. We want it to actually put it in the middle of the comp and all that. And while I could just grab these keyframes or whatever, I'm just going to grab this whole animator. So it's going to take all the information that's in here. And I'll grab the layer transforms. Just go up to animation, save animation preset. You give it a name. Let's just dump it in my downloads folder and call it this. Yep, it's mad at me because I'm saving it somewhere else.
Yeah, because usually it wants you to put them in the user folder in the thing.
The folder in the thing.
You know, the folder next to the app. I don't know. If you're on a Mac or a PC, I think it's different.
So I've got some, you know what? I'm going to stick it way up here just to kind of help demonstrate. All right. So I've got my cursor kind of up here. I got my text kind of up here. Let's apply that preset. Obviously, you just need to navigate to where it is on your system. Why'd it kind of disappear? One thing that's very important to remember is that presets are applied when you are in the timeline. So I'm going to hit U to reveal these keyframes, and there's those keyframes. I was very intentional about having my cursor up here so that I would, oopsie, do this. If you want these to be back at the start, you need to be at the start when you apply the preset. But now it set the layer position and scale and rotation. We didn't change most of those, but and then it gave it all the properties that I told it I wanted as part of the preset. And so it'll apply that to your layer. And now I don't have to build it from scratch.
Boom. Hopefully that helps people with their preset problems. Maybe. We do actually have a question here coming in near the end of the show.
I see it.
This is from Patricia Donate or Patricia Donate. It's one of the two. We'll figure it out. Let me know which one though. I'm brutal with names. But
well, if we want to keep it on theme from today, I think we're gonna just have to call her Patricia Donut.
I guess so. Yeah. It's not even donut day, Kyle. But her question's a great one here about creating time codes, countdowns, and stuff. Because we're touching text layers already, I think this fits great. There is, of course, like a time code effect in After Effects.
There is.
I don't care for it. It's easier if this is a text layer, right, for us to be able to style it. But how do we generate... okay, it was the first one. So in order to style the text, we want to keep it as a text animator, or as a text layer. So that means that what we want to do is have the countdown live inside the source text in some way.
Are you asking me to create this, Evan?
Yeah. You just do what I'm describing, I guess. Well, there's a lot of ways, right? And I think a lot of it comes down to what time. We're talking about like time codes, countdowns, stuff like that. You could be counting down metrically, so using the number system that we all enjoy.
Not in this country.
Oh, sorry. So yeah, of course, this is going to be a base 12 system.
The most reasonable of systems.
You want to count the number of qubits, and then once you reach, I don't know, a furlong of qubits, you convert it into a hectare. No, numbers. If you just have to make it go by numbers, like say we're going to go from 100 down to 1, we can do that pretty easily using linear, using time, using math.floor, math.etc., those bits. When you need to make a time code, that's when things get a little bit stranger because it has to be based on time, right? Yeah. And, seconds that turn into... like, what is it?
Hours.
60 seconds turns into a minute. And then if you're down on milliseconds, or because it's 100 milliseconds in a second, is that true?
I don't know. You're the metric guy.
Well, no, time isn't metric. That's the problem.
Isn't it, though?
Boy, let me look that up real quick. So I don't get... No. But the idea is that, like, if you're going to do something with time in that way, in bushels and pecks.
Yes.
Nick, that is like a 12 stone question right there. British stones. Kyle, we're going to cut your screen to see what you've been...
Oh, boy. Well, I mean, I haven't done much, but I'm going to give what I think is kind of a good general purpose thing.
Right.
So the most important thing here, you want to give yourself a slider control. And effect expression controls slider control. Probably the most used of the expression controls. It will do nothing because it's just a control. Right. I'm just going to set this to some random number here, 540. You know what? Let's give it some decimals. So what you can do is you can take your source text and you can drive that by a bunch of different stuff. In this case, I'm going to drive it from this slider control. Okay. So you can alt click on it to create an expression, or you can use this little property pick whip. And I'm just going to drive it right to that slider. So at its most basic, this is a real easy way to, make a count up or a count down, like from 0 to something. Oh, why is it so scrambly like that? Well,
scrambly-bambly.
Yeah, I'll tell you why. And it's because obviously, the control only shows 2 decimals, but there's a lot more there. So there's a couple different ways to deal with this. You can wrap this in parentheses, and you can say math.round, and then it'll round it to a whole number. And if you want a whole number, then great. That's that. You can also add something else to the end. You can use a command called toFixed, and let's say we want 2 decimal points. Oops, that's wrong. I need to add value.toFixed. Sometimes you need that, and sometimes you don't. Nope. Wrong. That's what I get. Oh, because math round is still up there. There we go. So 2 fixed, and then you can specify the decimal points. So if I always want 2 decimal points, that would be what happens. And do I need that dot value? Yes, because it's the value of the slider that we're then setting to a fixed thing. There's other more complicated ways to do this that, give you varying degrees of control and stuff. But if you're just looking for kind of a simple keyframeable number slider, and you want to be able to specify how many digits it has, by the way, 2 fixed with empty inside is just no decimals. But this is a nice way to do it.
And Joel out there is saying that there are lots of expressions you can just go ahead and copy and paste from the world. These are problems that have been sorted out by Creative Cow eons ago.
Thanks, Dan Everts.
Just go ahead and sort on through. You'll find them there. But there's also a lot of time conversion methods right in the scripting language. Convert seconds to frames. Convert. There's a lot of time-based math in there that's already for you to make use of. So as long as that fits, you can generate all kinds of things. One of the things that really gets me sometimes when making counters are these like UX, UI things. I'm gonna go to our faces here real quick. Is that when you're counting, right? You should make sure you're using like a monospaced font.
Yeah.
Because it starts going like all over the place, or just all going places. Monospaced fonts are your friend, because that's what we use actually for most clock interfaces, right? Like, because you don't have that jumping around.
And I think Joel actually just asked a question that kind of addresses that. There is, I'm going to forget the name of it off the cuff, but fairly recently somebody released a script, I think it is, that will force any font monospaced specifically for this kind of stuff. I'm pretty sure it's on AE scripts, but I don't remember the name. So that could be a solution if you have to use a very specific typeface and you need this kind of functionality.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is you really have to choose like what is going to hold it down. Like, is the decimal point going to stay in the same spot? Is it the edge of it? Is it what part of the number stays and what part moves? That's those are the decision factors. But yeah, forcing something monospaced, very excellent. All right, Kyle, we got some other questions here. I know we're coming into the end of the show. Yeah. It's 2:00 already. But we got some tips for little motion designer beginners. Safe FX is asking. So we'll end the show. Usually we do a lightning round, but we don't have a swathe of questions to mill through. So Kyle, do you has tips for little motion designers?
For little motion designers,
keyboards.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, obviously there are, countless places to watch tutorials nowadays. Obviously Evan's channel is a great one to see things, but something to remember is if you're just kind of watching random YouTube tutorials, you're getting techniques often kind of out of context. And especially if you're like, oh, cool, I want to, make this cool lightning explosion effect or whatever, you're going to see the steps to do that. But you're usually not going to see the 4 hours of context that really should be provided to tell you why you're making some of those decisions. Honestly, if you're just starting out, a thing that a lot of people are still overlooking, Adobe wants people to know how to use their software, and they want to give them that context. And so if you go to, I believe it starts here by default, but with the first time you open the program, but there is a workspace specifically devoted to learning how to use After Effects. And so if you're just getting started, that's a great place to get started.
Yeah, and they do take you through some real nice beginner stuff that I think is great. Let's see. My tip for a little motion designer beginner is to design first, motion second. That's my best advice. Design, if there is limited motion in a thing, if the design principles and the foundations are good, then the motion can come second. Those are kind of the idea, and it's tool agnostic is what I'll say. So,
have a reason. I mean, obviously, like you got to learn tools to be able to do stuff, and the beginning there's a bit of a hump for sure, but
I think
a good idea, is
like the reason why they have people basically doing arts and crafts in Design 101 is with no tool. All right, here's some cardboard. Please make circle. Please make square. Please arrange them in nice way. Like that's it. That's what it is, And it's the sort of fundamental building block stuff that requires no software or no tool of any kind.
Yeah, I think the thing I always get hung up on is I absolutely agree. Like, focus on a good idea and a good design and stuff. But I mean, let's be honest. If you are hitting a wall because you don't know, the tool can do the thing, but you don't know how to do it, at a certain point, it's going to discourage you and you'll be too frustrated to do it. So there's a balance of all that, I think. And there's a hump as there is with learning anything,
I was, this is when I was at a thing in Ukraine, and they were talking about the importance of, they talk about a T type skill set that someone has, right? That you need this broad generalized base and then some specificity. So if you were to like graph all the things you're good at, you end up with this baseline that is thick and then one long thing that you're an expert in. And the importance of filling that out and how like everything kind of grows. Your technical ability is going to increase, but then your design sensibility is also going to increase. So it's not all one thing and all another thing. So sometimes it's got to go a little bit. Trying to think, we should probably shut her down, but we do have one more, one actual lightning fire thing here. Do you suggest we create artboards? Heck yeah.
Yeah. Well, you missed a crucial word at the beginning, which is how do you suggest we create?
Oh, how do I do it? Well, look, in the lightning round, I don't read all the question. I only read part of it. But how? We use Milanote to knock our stuff around because it's a virtual space that we can do with that. However, you can create artboards using Illustrator, knock them around in Photoshop. They are a kind of thing that you can organize in all kinds of programs. I just really happen to like Milanote because it's also a clipper, right? Everything we do is digital now, so the digital, but you're looking around the internet. Ooh, that's inspiring. Save to inspiration. Yes, please. Anyway, that's how I do it. What about you, Kyle? How do you suggest we create artboard?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're interpreting this. A lot of people call them mood boards. So I'm assuming that's what Midiful means by this, but agreed. Honestly, I think the answer is whatever tool you like, something that makes it easy to move things around, to bring things in, to move them around, to maybe trim off bits that you don't want to see. Maybe Photoshop is good because it allows you to easily like maybe unify the colors of everything using adjustment layers or something. It kind of depends on what phase of that you're in and how far it needs to go. Are you just grabbing stuff for your own kind of idea dump? Or is this something you need to present to a client? How polished does it need to be? That'll kind of help determine where you need to do it too.
Yeah. And then, so from a technical end, and then from like, where do you start the process? It can really help to have one kind of big unifying idea, even if it's just, I'm going to populate this board with words, and then I'm going to replace those with pictures. I'm going to populate this with concepts, and then, you start with ideas, and then what does that translate to in terms of color, and then font, and then maybe that leads you down a different rabbit hole. Like, as an exploration medium, it's important to really take it from starting vague and conceptual and broad strokes and refining into more concrete things.
I'll just use the word mind mapping real quick, since that's a good condensed term for what you were just describing.
Are there any other corporate speak words we can dunk out here?
I mean, it's helpful because then you can Google mind map, and there's several tools for that as well. Although, of course, a piece of paper is a great one.
Kyle, how do you synergize your upflow?
I don't know, but if you ping me back on that later, we can.
Okay. Well,
something.
Yeah. We'll circle back on the two-way. And,
there you go.
And finally, Joel is asking about our thoughts on cavalry. It's all right.
Yeah. Still exploring it, but it's cool.
Yeah.
Cool for what it does.
Yeah. Well, we have a user group around here that we used to meet up in the before times, and many of us have tried to like do something with cavalry, right? We've been able to do small things, but we've not been like, oh, neat narrative piece, cool. We have yet to get there with it. But yeah, a lot of folks still active in the chat though. Happy to have you with us. It's great to hang out here on Fridays. We will be back next Friday. If you have more big time questions for us, like Kevin did, then please get them at us in the form. The form is available in the description. If you want to get your mitts on some of the things that we worked on here, get those donuts from 3D Ocean, get that Frozen Hospital scene from Video Hive. Thanks to Envato for sponsoring this stuff. It's always good.
I offer a challenge to you, the viewers. Is there a way that we can incorporate donuts into next week's demo too?
Yeah, we're only interested in questions that revolve around the stock elements that we currently have on our hard drive.
Perfect.
I don't know. I'd love to do more Cinema 4D stuff. That's something that I'm particularly weak in. So, any excuse to crack that open and do more things, I'm into it. But yeah. Oh, maybe we talk about thick stroke next hotline. Hey, maybe. If people put the question in the forum, we'll get to it. But yeah, thank you so much for hanging out. Kyle, thank you for hanging out. You mentioned at the beginning that you're going to be doing some post-production world online. When does that start? How can people learn more about it?
Yeah, that's May 17th through 19th, and ppw-online.com, I want to say. Yes. Here, I'll drop that in the chat real quick.
Okay.
You can check it out. There's a ton of great speakers and great, sessions. Obviously, it's all online at this point, but check that out. A lot of cool stuff. The editor of the latest Star Wars movie, which we'll reserve discussion about that, but she is one of the keynote speakers, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah. But yeah, for next week, Cinema 4D versus Blender. I guess that problem is that chat has already happened elsewhere. We do not need to continue it. I don't know. Kyle, I don't think we're the show that says one thing is better than another thing. That's not our deal.
Only the mildest takes here.
Yeah, mild takes, hot presenters, motion design hotline. Always a pleasure, man. Thanks for coming out. Thanks for hanging with me here, and look forward to hanging with you next Friday, and hopefully more of these people come around.
And more donuts.
And maybe Sergey from Euchre Media, Joel is suggesting. But yeah, thank you all so much for hanging out with us, and we will see you next time. Bye for now.